Hey everybody. This is part one of the 79 Jeep Cherokee build series. It is a 360 Turbo 400 quad-track truck with Dana 44s in the front and rear, and until we picked it up, it was hibernating in Arizona for around 20 years. We've already done quite a few things to start to get it running and driving, like hoses, bushings, a little wiring, and a few main and rod bearings. But today we'll be addressing the steering box. The steering box is a Saginaw 800 series box, and it's leaking pretty bad from both the steering shaft and the pitman arm shaft. Initially we were just going to replace the seals, but after doing a 2,700 mile cross-country trip and feeling how tremendously sloppy the box is, we just decided to replace it with a remanufactured unit from Lee Power Steering. Lee Power Steering is a really reputable steering gear manufacturer. I've bought a couple of their products in the past, and even on another full-size Jeep, and it made just a tremendous difference in how the truck drove and whatnot. So I'm curious to see the before and after of this one, and I'm just going to be documenting the build process and try and give you an idea of what difference this actually makes on a truck like this. Obviously this box is super worn out. It's not really a direct comparison with the factory steering box, which I'm sure is much better than this one. And it also needs some suspension bushing still and things like a steering stabilizer and stuff like that. But you can kind of get the idea of how much of a difference this actually makes on a vehicle like this. So right now I'm just inside the truck. I'm just moving the wheel back and forth, and you can kind of see like it's difficult to tell, but the amount of play that is on the pitman arm coming out of the bottom of the box, you can see that shaft moving around there. It may not look like a lot, but it translates to quite a bit when you're actually driving down the road.
Here, right? If you really crank on it, you'll see it kind of rock, because it means this bearing is shot.
Okay.
So it rocks back and forth.
This is how much movement there is in the actual wheel, and this is just sitting still, and we'll be able to show the difference of that later. But so first, we take out the main pitman arm nut. They come loose?
Yeah.
Nice. Now we're getting to the more difficult part of this project, and that is removing the pitman arm from the steering box. In the past, I've broken tools trying to do this. My brother has broken tools trying to do this. It's very tough. It can be quite a thing. You might require some heat or some penetrating oil or something along those lines. I think this one was good to us because it was just soaked in power steering fluid. A breaker bar? Or the jack handle, rather? Or
No, it's okay. Just don't want to destroy the tool just yet.
right. All right. It's that easy. Good thing that was soaked in fluid, or that probably would have been a lot more difficult, I imagine. Now, typically, that's the hardest part of this, right?
Yeah, generally. Usually the tool will let go before this pitman shaft weldment.
Right.
I think we were the 30th person to use this tool. It probably wouldn't be worse.
And when do you typically do you replace those at all, or not really?
The pitman?
Yeah.
Not usually, not on these, because it's just a solid piece.
Okay.
It's not really a wear item.
Now we're removing the lines from the top of the box.
So one's 5/8, one's 11/16.
Yeah, I guess it's so you don't switch them up, I guess.
Let me turn the wheel.
crunchy greens.
It's a 12.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, the brake booster bolts were metric for some stupid reason.
Just do this from underneath too, but
Just something to keep in mind, guys. Some of these late 70s, early 80s American cars do have metric and standard hardware. Nowadays, they're pretty much all metric, but back then they had a bit of both. This is just an attempt to get some of the excess fluid out of the box, so it's not quite as messy, although unfortunately this is a pretty messy job. So right here we're just putting the pitman arm back on temporarily to get the rag joint bolts loose.
Loose?
I think so. It's just coated in all that desert schmutz that we had. So it fails. These pins kind of serve as a fail-safe. So if the rag joint completely busts, it'll be sloppy, but you won't lose total steering.
Gotcha.
So these pins will still intersect with this.
Why are they like tapered like that towards the end? Is it just
Just how they designed it, I guess. Maybe to allow some for flex so it doesn't bind.
Gotcha. Interesting.
Yeah, that should be it. Now we should be able to.
Off she goes.
Oh, this column probably hasn't compressed in a long time.
No, probably not.
I have a bigger screwdriver here.
I guess that's a good thing.
Now breaking loose the 4 steering box mounting bolts.
Not as tight as I thought they'd be.
Me neither. I thought these things would be like all the ugga-duggas, considering how tight the, whatchamacallit,
Pitman arm?
shaft was.
Yeah. Why did you take the bottom ones loose again?
Just so it's easier. Like for these, it's easier to hold this from here and take the bolts out, because it's once it comes loose, it just gets real heavy.
Right.
So it's easier to kind of put some leverage on it and back the bolts out.
Gotcha.
That's my weak arm.
Now the steering box should pretty much come down.
Good. Okay. This load, this load here on this bearing.
Mm-hmm.
So I've heard that the bearing goes, but I've also heard that the housing will actually expand a little bit, so it allows the bearing to move in there, kind of chew itself up regardless.
I see. Interesting.
That, and the inside is going to have, probably could have been adjusted some, but with the way it was leaking on the input and at the pitman shaft, and then the pitman shaft rocking around.
This indicates bearing wear and
It means
failure.
that the whole thing has to be rebuilt.
Mm-hmm. And then you said the rag joint is actually not in terrible shape.
No. It's it's soaked. It'll probably come apart eventually. It's soaked with fluid, but overall,
It looks bigger. Is it bigger diameter?
a little bit. And the only difference is the splines are different.
Right. Is there any series or line they call this, or is it just like?
It's the box.
Yeah.
I think this is just the 800.
Okay.
So it looks. It's not the same thing.
No. It's only a 3.
Shit. Yeah, it's missing that bolt.
So after doing a little bit of research on this, it doesn't seem like the 4-bolt is totally necessary, so we're just going to use the 3-bolt box for now and just check to see if there's any deformation down the road in the frame.
I'm a little worried about the fittings, but I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
Lee's site says that they're mostly metric,
Mm-hmm.
and that the SAE boxes are hard to find, but it says yes, you can put the metric or the SAE threads instead of metric things, and I'm like,
Really?
I don't know about all that.
It's It's weird because I thought it was like O-ring was like all the flare ones were absolutely SAE and all the O-rings were you know.
Apparently they just put the insert in, you know?
Pretty thing though.
It looks rad.
Yeah.
So I was so defeated when it was just, I'm like, oh no.
Right.
I don't want to wait another 6 weeks.
Right.
I really don't want to put that box back in.
No, this one's shot. It's pretty bad. Just the drive out here was pretty eye-opening for that. Well, I guess we'll put it back in and see.
See what happens.
And now reinstalling the new Lee Power steering box. This is probably a two-person job. I would just keep that in mind if you're doing this project by yourself. It gets pretty heavy when you're holding it up there by yourself trying to get those bolts in. So.
I clean the box side of it. I didn't clean this side very well.
The new rag joint comes with different washers?
Different bolts.
Oh.
One's like 5/16, one's like 3/8.
Reinstalling the factory pitman arm with the new nut and lock washer supplied from Lee.
And turn the steering shaft a little bit.
Mine's big notch. Of course, it's on the back side where you can't see it.
Yeah.
The torque procedure for the main nut for the pitman arm onto the steering box shaft is 140 foot-pounds, and then to drive around the block and then retorque to 185 foot-pounds. So you're going to need a pretty big torque wrench for this.
Feels okay.
Okay.
Yeah, feels okay.
Alright. It felt really weird on the outside of the truck, but I don't know.
Sure as hell did. A little apprehensive, to be honest.
Doesn't look like it. Alright.
See what happens.
Yeah.
What? Can I buy regular clamps?
I was looking at that.
Why did I do that?
Lee explicitly states that you need a power steering filter on the return line in order to, claim warranty work on this box. And I think that's a pretty good idea, just purely because of how many failed power steering pumps I've had. Lee actually sells their own power steering pump, and if this one fails, we will 100% be switching to that one. But for now, we're just going to do this, and if it fails, then we'll end up buying a Lee unit. This is the absolute best way and most reliable way to bleed the power steering on pretty much any power steering box setup. Just jack the front tires off the ground and then turn left to right a bunch of times until you just don't see any air bubbles. Just lock to lock a million. And now we see there is a lot less play in this box versus the last one. A little difficult, and this is the most precise way to measure this, but huge difference.
Feel alright?
Feels fine. Feels a little stiffer.
Yeah.
It's definitely not that one finger.
Right. That's why I was definitely wondering about that, if it would have retained that or not.
It's definitely felt a little heavier.
Yeah. Okay. That feels a lot tighter than it used to.
Oh yeah.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you could even a little bit. You could feel the whole truck kind of like it's turning the wheels.
Okay, right through a red, huh? Very f***ing cool. Way to make the steering box not the most interesting thing of the drive, you know? Yeah?
Oh yeah. It's like just little inputs.
Yeah, like barely any, huh?
Yeah.
Is it pull or anything like that, or? The wheel's pretty straight, man. Oof. Yeah, because before it would kind of, you'd hit a bump like that and it would kind of wander a bit, right?
Yeah, just go all over the place.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not a race car.
Oh, yeah.
It never was.
No.
But no, it feels really good.
Yeah, that's great.
Honestly, it feels at least on par, the same as the Yukon, so or maybe even better than the Yukon.
Really?
Yeah, it feels really good, man.
Nice. That's good.
It's a lot easier to drive. Before it was like, you know.
Yeah, there was a lot more input required before, I guess. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can like just drive this to fingertips for the most part. It's
Mm-hmm.
even with the all-terrains, it's pretty good.
Oh, yeah. Should be much more enjoyable to drive now, I guess, you know?
God, yeah. Yeah, because even like right there, the last time I took it on it was like,
Really?
yeah.
Yeah, I guess it still needs shocks and stuff, and I guess the steering stabilizer. But after that, like, you know, it's shouldn't be bad, you know.
Which that 3-volt thing is always gonna be in my head now.
Yeah.
Is 3 volts enough volts? Yeah, it's weird because it's got way more steering effort, but I mean not a ton more, but it's
It definitely felt it. Yeah.
it's noticeable.
Right. I mean, that might be a good thing, I guess. You know.
Yeah, the other one was too. This feels much more modern.
Mm-hmm.
The other one was like there was just no feedback at all.
Right. It really was pretty weird, just driving that.
Yeah,
you know.
and especially with being as sloppy as it was just so over assisted that you would do like a minor correction
And then, yeah.
and then it would just kind of go whatever the hell it wanted to.
Right. Right. Big difference though, in just driving, just what you can tell right now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Even at this low speed, it's
Right.
like I just got to do this to kind of
Mm-hmm.
do little minor adjustments.
Right. Right.
Before it was like it was quite a bit more. It was like 3 to 4 inches in each direction. This is like minimal.
Right. You think it's bled? All right.
It feels okay. I don't
Okay.
hear any weird noises. Yeah, I think the steering stabilizer might be frozen up or something. Because the one thing that's different about this truck compared to the other things is that the return to center is like kind of. It could also be caster or whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not bad.
Right.
It feels so much better.
That's great. I'm glad to hear it, man.
It's like every time the front wheels would hit a bump, it would just be like.
Yeah. 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 It's crazy how much wear was on that box. I wonder what they did with that box, because that box was totally screwed up. You know.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. This thing may have lived off-road its whole life, but that bearing is definitely padded.
Right.
Like that's one thing. The one indicator of like a Saginaw box is like, I mean, because just that little bit of rock on the pitman shaft,
Uh huh.
that means you're gonna feel tons of movement.
Yeah, it translates so much into everything. Yeah.
Because not only do you have slop in the gear itself, but then once that moves, it's every time it's just like a couple of degrees of deflection, and then everything just kind of moves around.
Right.
I think that was a lot of also the way we get upset in bumps. That's why I
Right.
thought the steering stabilizer was wasted. I'm like, this thing must not be doing anything. And I bet you if it didn't have a steering stabilizer on, it'd probably be almost undrivable.
Right.
After you've gone on your little drive and everything's all settled in, go ahead and torque the main pitman arm nut and the 3 mounting bolts for the steering box. And that should pretty much do it, guys. There are still plenty of things to do to this truck, so this build series should be pretty lengthy, and I'll be updating it periodically, and also be starting another build series soon, and this one's been a long time coming. So thanks for watching, guys. Take it easy.